welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to take a look at how to customize a data loading wizard to show user-friendly messages. For this we're going to be using the data load definition using an Apex collection and an Excel file. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So this is our user case. We have three tables. We have the task table, task priority, and task status. I've gone ahead and created their reports and forms for each of the tables. A requirement for this application would be that once a user uploads a file with new tasks, we're gonna call the data loading process that will populate the Apex collection in the data load definition, and we're gonna show a preview with the validations of the data that was loaded. After that, the user will review the changes, and if the user agrees with that, we're gonna call a PL SQL package to insert the validated records into the task table. Then we're gonna show a screen with the results with the failed and successful inserted rows. Alright, so to start with that, we're going to go ahead to our share components to create that data load definition. Alright, so if you don't know how to create a data load definition or would like to refresh on that, please take a look at my previous video where I go more in depth about data loading definition. Alright, so we're going to select the option from scratch. Right, and in this case we're just gonna name it task as the name of the table, and for the target type we'll select collection. I'm going to use a collection since we want to have more control over the data and customize the results. Just something really important to keep in mind is that a collection has a limit of 50 columns, so if you have more than that you will probably have to take a different approach. Right, so for collection name, I will just name it task loading collection. Right, and again, in this case, you will have the scripts and the files in the description, so you can use them when it's convenient for you. Alright, so we're just gonna go ahead and create the data load. Now, if you notice on our use case, we have the task table, and in order to insert the values, we need a task status ID and a task priority ID. So we're gonna need to do a lookup table for those. So if we click on the data load, we're just gonna change the settings a little bit, where we're going to replace it. We're going to replace every time the user uploads a new file. The data that was used before will be replaced with a new file. Alright, so we're gonna edit the data profile and let's add 2 columns. I'm gonna name it C05. And for the column data type, we're gonna select SQL query. And we're gonna return the task status. Okay, and number, right? Then we're gonna create another one that will be in reference to the task priority table. So it's gonna name it column 6, and the column type will be a SQL query as well. And in this case, we're just gonna return the ID for the priority that is being uploaded in the file. Alright, now that we have that, we can apply changes. So right over here, what we're gonna do is that we're gonna add a new button that will prompt a wizard so the user can upload the file, see the data validation and the results. So we're gonna first create the page. So for this, we're gonna select a wizard and we're gonna name it data loading process. And we're gonna need 3 pages, which would be the data load source, the validation and the results. I'm gonna select the page mode to be a model dialog. We do not need a navigation entry for this since it will be coming once I click the button. Alright, and I'm gonna here name it page name. Let's call it data load source. Then for the step 2, it will be data validation. And the last one will be results. Right. Yep, now that we have that, let's go, before we start diving into customizing the wizard, to the task page. And let's add a button so we can test it out. I will go ahead and select text with icon. I'm gonna go ahead and let's do the next. Alright, and let's name it upload data. Alright, and for the icon, let's use FA upload. Alright, and for behavior, we're gonna select redirect to page in this application. In this case, we're gonna prompt the data load source page. Alright, so now that we have that, let's see how it looks. Okay, click on that. Alright, so what we'll do is start customizing each of the steps. On the first step, we'll prompt the user to drop the file. So let's go ahead and edit the page. And we don't need these items, so let's just remove it. And let's start by selecting File Browse. Alright, and let's name it File. Alright, so for the label, let's select Upload a File. We're gonna display it as a block drop zone. And for the description, we can choose supported files. So since we're going to be using an Excel file for this application. Okay. For the appearance, I'm going to select optional for now. So let's go ahead and test it out. So let's reload the frame. Okay, perfect. So in this case, I do not want my label to show. So we probably need to go and change it and change the appearance to hidden. Now, since by default, Apex will add 2 column spans for the label, let's change the label column span to 0 as well. Alright, now let's customize that a little bit more. I'm gonna stretch the form item. Alright, that looks better. So we're gonna add some validations for the block drop zone in case the user decides to click next before uploading a file, or if the data type, the file type is not an Excel. So for that, let's go back to our item and let's create a validation. The first validation, I'll name it file type. File name is not null. The type will be item is not null. Make reference to the file. And for the error, we'll select that the label must have some value. Then we only want this to happen if the user selects to go to the next step. Right? Then let's create the other validation, which be if the data type is not valid. So file type is valid. And for this, we're gonna need to return a boolean just to make sure that if it's an Excel or not. So for this, we'll use the Apex Data Parse package, where we're going to be asserting if the file uploaded is an Excel. You can see this, and that if that condition is true, then it will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. Right? And for the error message in this case, we're gonna say that there's an invalid file type and that the supported file type is an Excel. Right? Again, we only want this to happen if the item is not null. Let's go ahead and click item is not null, and then it will be the file. Alright, so let's go ahead and reload the frame. And if we click next, yes, it says that the file needs to have a value. Now let's see what happens if I select something that is not Excel. It will also tell us that the invalid file type. Okay, alright, so now let's customize the step number 2. But before doing that, once the user uploads a file here, we're going to validate the data and also do a process to load the collection. So for that, let's go to processing, create process, and for this I'm gonna name it load data to collection. Right, and in here you have two options. You can use the data load definition, the data loading capabilities that is already in Apex. However, by default, this process generates a message in the screen that I do not want to show to the user in this case. So I'm gonna have to do it manually, the data loading. Okay, so for this, we're gonna have the file and data, and we're gonna use the Apex data loading package. So what we're doing here is getting the file, the beloved content, and save it in our temporary files, where the name is the file that we are uploading. Now, once we have that, then we're gonna call the Apex data loading package load data function, where we require the application ID, then the name of our data load definition, which would be the static ID, and the data to load. Right, now once we have that, let's go ahead and set the server-side condition that we want to do this once the user clicks next. That's when we want to load our collection. Okay, all right. Now, as I showed you in the diagram before, we also want to validate the data that is being loaded so we can show a preview to the user. To do that, we're gonna need another process. But before we do that, I just want to really quick create an application item so we can make a reference to our collection without hard coding the name. Let's go to our share components. So we're gonna go to application item, click create, and for the name, let's just call it task collection. And let's create the item, and then go back to share components, and let's create a computation for this. For computation item for the task collection, we're gonna set the name of our collection that we're using in the data load definition, which is task loading call. All right, let's create the computation, and let's go back to page 8, and now we can create the process. So for this process, we're gonna name it validate data, and for this we're gonna call our package. So if we take a look really quick to this, in here in our package task, we have a procedure called validate data that requires the collection name, and it will loop through each of the values to check for any errors. So for example, if we have the task name is null, if the task status is null, or if it's not found, task priority is not null, and the due date, since if you select a task priority, the user needs to add a due date. The same goes if the task priority is not null but is not found, and if the due date is in the past, since we're only looking at tasks that are from the present to the future. Alright, and all these messages will be saved in error message. And as you can see here, I'm making reference to all the columns in the collection. And once I have all the messages, all the error messages, I'll be loading them into the column using the Apex collection package and the function update member attribute, which requires for arguments, for parameters, the collection name, the sequence, and also the column which I'm making reference to. Alright, so it's back to the validate data. So for that, we're gonna create a function body using the task package, validate data procedure, and we're passing the name of our collection. Alright, which was a task collection. Right, so save it. Now in this case, I don't want to show any success message, so I'm just gonna leave it empty. And we want to add a server-side condition that when I press the button next, and the item is not null, right, now let's go ahead and take a look at it. Click the data loading. Perfect. We don't get any errors, so that means the collection has been created. So just to see that, let's click on session and let's click on collections. And in here you can see that the task loading collection is being updated. All right, now that we have that, let's go ahead and edit step number 2. So with that, let's go to page 9. Let's start customizing it. So again, we do not need this item, so we can delete it. And we're gonna add a preview. So for that, we're gonna select classic report. Then you're gonna put it under sub-regions. And let's call it preview. Right. For this, we're gonna need to change the source to a SQL query, since I need to make a reference to my collection. All the columns, the first one being the task name, task status, task priority, due date, and error message, which I'm making reference in my validate procedure. Right, and then again, I'm using my binary variable to my application item, task collection. Right, and then sure. Right, let's see how that looks. Now for the columns, you can see here that we have the task name, all of them, plus the error message. We're gonna change a little bit the appearance. So for template, let's keep it on a standard, but let's remove the body padding, and the header, I'm going to change it to hidden but accessible, since I don't really want to show preview in there. Right, and then on attributes, we're gonna change the template options to a stretch to report, since we wanted to cover everything. I do not want the different alternating rows, and I only want the horizontal border. Okay. Now for the pagination displays, if we're only showing a few records, we don't want to show the pagination, so we're just gonna remove it. Alright, so let's see how that looks. Let's save. Here, now since I create an application item, I will need to close my session and log in again, since that's the setting that I selected when creating it. Okay, now we can upload our data. Alright, and in here you can see the preview with the task name, the status, priority, due dates, and also the error messages for the rows that are not correct. Now, if we want to customize this a little bit more, we could add a row status, a check, or an X, depending on its status. So for that, let's quick edit the preview. And on the code, what we'll need is a case statement that when the column 7, the error message column, is null, then I want to show a check. So for that, I'm gonna go to Universal Theme and select on icons and look for a check. Right, I'm gonna keep on a scale of 1 and copy the HTML. Right, let's copy it. And else, I want an X to show. So let's look for the remove icon. Yep, perfect. Again, a scale of 1, copy the HTML and add it. Okay, so let's see how this looks. Oh, my bad. And then also let's finish in our case, and we're gonna name it row status. Okay. Now let's reload the frame, see how it looks. Alright, so also we do need to turn off the escape characters option. Okay, that looks better. Now if we want to be a little bit more detailed, we could also add different colors to this. So let's go to the preview again, to the code, and let's add some color. So for that, let's go back to Universal Theme and let's click on Reference. And we're gonna select Color and Status Modifiers. And then let's select a pretty color. I would like to go with this one right here, 35. So let's copy it and add it to our class. And for the X, I would like to have a red. So let's just choose this one. Add it to the class as well. Okay, so let's see how that looks. And reload the frame. Pretty, I like it. So the row status and the colors. So just to finish that, let's just rearrange the columns. And I do not want to show the heading, so I'm just gonna remove that. And I want everything to align in the center as well. Okay, one more time. There we go. So now we have the task name, the status, due date, error message, and also the checks. Okay, now we're gonna customize this button to be load data. So if the user is okay with the changes and wants to insert them in the table, then he will need to click on this and go. If not, they can just cancel. So let's go ahead and do that. So again, let's quick edit. And on next, I'm just going to change that to load data. Okay. Text for this. Yep, turn right. And for the action, we're gonna need to submit the page. Alright, and now we just need to create a process that will insert the values into the table. For that, we're gonna use our task package, and we're gonna use the function load data, which requires the collection name and In the body, you can see that it will insert all the values that do not show an error message in column number 7, since we only want the correct ones. I will also like to show the user in the results page how many inserted rows there are and how many were not inserted. For that, we'll be returning the total inserted rows. We also have an exception handling here where in case of an error, it will raise an application error showing a general message to the user. Of course, in a real application, you will need a better error handling approach. So let's create a process. So for this one, I'm gonna name it load data to table. And on the code, we're gonna make a reference to our inserted rows that we'll create in the next page, and we're gonna be calling the load data. Right, so that will do it. So let's go to our next page, and for that, let's remove the results here. Let's delete this item, and we're gonna add an item that'll be on display only. Okay, and we're gonna name it inserted rows. Okay. Then for the template, we're gonna select optional. Let's add another display only item that will show the not inserted rows. Let's just call it not inserted rows. Okay, we don't want to set on page submit, so let's remove that. And the same appearance, which is optional. Okay. Now we will also need another static content that will show the values, the results that were not uploaded. So just select a region, static content, and let's call it errors. On the region body, what we're gonna need is a classic report as we did in our preview under subregion, and let's call it errors, error log. Alright, and again, we're gonna use a SQL query for this since we want the values that were not uploaded. So we're gonna use the one where column number 7, the error message, is not known. Those are the only ones that I would like to show. Okay. Let's see how that looks with the inserted rows and the error logs as well. Now load new data, upload our file. Everything is correct here. Load the data. And yes, we have in here inserted rows, and we haven't added the not inserted rows yet. And we also are going to show here a little preview. We'll modify the design in a minute. For not inserted rows, we're gonna scroll down to source, and on type, we're gonna select function body. And on the inserted rows, the code that we will use is this one, where we are obtaining the length of our collection using the collection member count function available in the Apex collection package. And to that, we're gonna subtract the inserted rows that were returned on the load data function in our package. Alright, so let's reload. Alright, and in here you can see that we have inserted rows 9 were inserted, and the non-inserted were 5. You can count them here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's customize the design now. So for the results, I'm gonna change the template to alert, and since this is the successful, we're just gonna do success to that. I'm gonna highlight the background. Now let's modify these errors. For here, let's remove the header. We don't want it, so we're gonna hit it. Let's remove the body padding as well, and let's remove the borders. right? And then on the error log, in template, in the appearance, we're gonna change it to alert as well. In this case, we're gonna do danger. Okay, perfect, that looks better now. Okay, so now let's just change each template a little bit more. Just make sure that we rearrange the error log, the row status is aligned to the center. We don't want to make it suitable. And to deactivate the escape special characters. Perfect. For the results, I would like to show it in the entire window. So let's click a stretch to fit window under the page. Okay. And let's do the same for the other, for the data validation. A stretch to fit window. Okay. Now let's just exit out, upload new data. Next, we can see here more in detail how it looks. With the new row status, everything is correct. If we click load data, then we show the results and also the error log in here. We can also remove the pagination in case it bothers you. So let's go back to page results. On the error log, under attributes, let's remove the alternated rows. Let's stretch the report as well. And then show the horizontal only and hide when all rows are displayed, the pagination. Let's reload it. Alright, so that looks even better now. We will just need to modify the name in our progress wizard. Alright, and as you can see, once the user clicks finish, then we can see all our task names that have been uploaded. Now, just before we end this tutorial, let's just modify our list with our progress list. Let's call it data load source for the first one. Let's apply changes, and then for step number 2, we're gonna name it data validation. Apply changes, and for the last one, we're gonna name it results. Okay, so let's go one more time. Yep, and we can see here that it has changed accurately. All right, so that's how we're customize our data loading wizard. As you can see, it's more user-friendly and easier for the user to see what was wrong and also see how many were inserted, which ones were not. That concludes our video for today on how to customize a data loading wizard. We took a look at Apex collections in a data loading definitions to show more user-friendly messages. If you have any suggestions of any other topic you would like me to cover, please leave a comment below. And all the files and scripts will be available to download in the description as well. Right, so I'll see you next time. Bye bye.